Okay, so here we are at the Battle of, what is it again, Veseris. And as far as I know, this is actually an independently written thing by Steve Jackson, but not that Steve Jackson. The Latins opened things up by using their cav. They destroyed one of the attacking Roman cav and also took out a Velite. Now it's going to be the Roman turn again, but we're seeing that getting the jump there was actually really somewhat advantageous because they were able to clear out really almost all of the cav on that side. We'll see if the Romans can rally that eventually. Well, the answer to that question was no. He's alone now. He didn't even get another action, so he could go off and try to rally or try to bring his one remaining pursuing cav back. The Latin Velites then moved forward through their lines and smacked into the Roman Velites. Now remember, the Romans have an advantage in numbers here, but getting the first shot in allowed the Latins to hit the flank areas in particular and the spaces between Velites so that they had a more even attack across the line. It probably broke out in the advantage of the Latins. We see one Latin having routed and 3 Romans having fled that initial engagement. The Latins, of course, can pull back if the Hastari move forward, so they feel somewhat secure in having attacked. Well, the Latins pushed forward with their heavier units and smashed the Velite line. It did not withdraw in front of them, but stood. Whether or not that's a good idea, I'm never quite sure. They don't get to throw their missiles. What value are they if they fall back and fall back and fall back? Of course, if they do get the advantage after falling back of hitting flanks, etc., that might make some sense. But it didn't look like that was going to be a huge advantage. That didn't look like it was going to turn out that way, just because the main line of heavies is larger than the Velite line. So they stood for whatever value, and, well, they didn't really stand, they broke after being hit, for the most part, because the heavies have the advantage, which means they do double damage on the shock table to them. However, Die Roll of Doom came up, and the Tribune was able to rally 2 of them. We're seeing the toll, though. This is not just Velites, but it's mainly Velites, but we got a couple cav in here, too. That's all Roman losses. None of that's Latins. Latins haven't lost a piece yet this turn. Alright, well, because of the Die Roll of Doom, the Latins get the next activation. They had the one. The Romans could have passed on the free activation that they got of their one. They'd rather have that. It seems valuable to go later anyway, for the most part, in these kind of circumstances. So letting the Latins have another activation doesn't really hurt. The only difficulty here is whether or not this cav is going to slash in and hit the Roman flank. But it could have done that before. The reason that was holding off was the Roman cav, what's left of it, actually the Sabine cav, which is really the only defense they have on that side there. Of course, if that cav comes in too close, it'll activate the Triari line, I believe. And right after I got done talking with you, we had one more activation. What happened? Damned if I remember. No forces moved. I rallied some troops, and then another Die Roll of Doom. And this one ended the turn. We've got some Romans retreating, and we've got the Latins retreating as well, just one of them. So nothing really happened. The cav didn't move forward. I didn't want to get them in motion and risk their position until after. This guy should have gone already. Oh well. Yeah, he's got a 2 initiative and no one else on the board does. All these guys have 3s actually, even though they say 2s. Anyway, that big pile of Romans, 43 route points. It's looking total, including the 5 from before. It's looking more and more like Decius Mus is going to have to consider offing himself and trying to help the Romans survive this onslaught. So, the Romans launched their Hastati line, no sacrifice yet, and slammed into the the Latin legionaries. Largely, that went well for the Romans. Got one unit routed here, but a couple units even on the flanks of the allies who were flying out from behind because the Romans were able to seep through. And then a bunch of units that routed. Now these guys rallied due to a die roll of doom reactivation chance, and that passes the initiative back to the Romans again, who could, of course, damned if I know what they could do. I mean, this was their big shot. Now it's kind of trying to rally and strengthen their line. The Principes, you don't want to commit them quite yet, because we want to see what happens on the flanks and whether or not that can be handled. So really it's strengthening that center and trying to prevent real chaos from ensuing. Well, the Latins launched their second line of heavies in, and now we're seeing just what kind of a mess this game can really devolve into. Basically, there's no more line commands coming on the Latin side. They're going to have to reform their army to get anything any semblance of a line. Although they're mixed in with the Velites. If they can get the Velites out of there, they might be able to launch a line attack at some point. But let's try to see where the front line is. So, gotta kind of coming down here, and then around here, and then down here, and that's pretty much you know, under all those counters, that's what we're seeing. Now, once we remove all the no missiles, and not all of them are going away, obviously, because people are locked in combat, even then it's going to be hard to tell because of this Roman versus Roman situation. It's tough to see who's dying where, too. These are Romans, these are Latins. Remember, the Romans are way behind, though. And at this point, they've got a big lead in terms of points towards routing, and they've got a bunch of guys routing off the board. I really ought to be considering doing that sacrifice. It's tough, and I don't know. But it definitely looks kind of desperate for Rome at this point. Now, I've got this line of Principes left. These are their killer units. These are the best they have. And I think I'm going to have to launch them at some point. Now, right now, I'm not sure the Romans get another action. We still got this cav over here that is open. So it looks like the Latins get the next action again. So Mus killed himself, and that made the Principe line have a -2 to its tactical quality checks. Not a lot was done with that, though, because the cav, first of all, then swept in and struck the flank somewhat. A little bit of damage there. But Manlius was only able to launch a limited attack. Even though he got 3 momentums, he mainly spent his time rallying forces. That -2 bonus was actually a real bonus for that in some cases. And not so much, well, -1 bonus there. But he really wanted to get his troops rallied rather than launch an attack. There's not a lot of avenue for attack. A little bit here that he kind of passed up, but he launched the main one over on the right flank. Managed to take out a cav unit, actually, that was routing. Hit that, which is kind of a bonus. Well, now the Latins have 1 activation left. Their leader, I can't remember his real name. Darned if I know what I'm going to do with him. It's such a mess there that it's really hard to launch an attack. I'll see what I can do. And our good friend Numisius, that's the commander's name, Rallied some forces over here, launched a very tiny attack, but then launched a more massive one over on this side. He got his full 3, and pretty much is driving that Roman left flank apart. The right flank is actually gaining on him, so we're seeing this kind of swinging action in the battle that often happens as one side gets one flank and the other gets the other. I'll flip and do all the administrative crap, and then we'll see where we are. Got a big pile of dead. I've got to sort them out and count them too. So one thing that's not made clear with Decius Mus's, his death, does that get counted against the Romans? I don't think that's reasonable. If anything, this is a morale-inducing effort. So it really shouldn't count towards breaking the army, and I've done it that way, and that's good because it would be 20 more points. When we counted up those losses, the Romans lost another 40 points or so. They're at 81. The Latins are only at 27. So certainly in terms of total casualties right now, the Romans are on the ropes. And if we look at position, they don't look that much better there either. We got kind of a couple units engaged up here. Their heaviest Principes in a forward position. They've got the rest of the line back here still ready to hit, and that could be a tremendous blow, but it looks like the Latins have had a chance to kind of recover a little bit and to start creating a much more solid front, especially over here on their right flank. Of course, they also have the cav advantage on both sides. Well, here it's gotten kind of scattered, but the Samnite cav just haven't moved. I think I'm close enough that I'm not sure about that. I have to look up the rules on the Triarii. I know 6 is an important number, but I think that's the distance between lines. It may be much closer for the effect of when you can actually launch the Triarii, but some of the Latins are certainly within 6. If the Romans can launch their Triarii, well, then the Latins might as well send theirs forward as well if they can get a commander up there who can launch the whole line. There's some routing units, but not a lot. A little scattering back here of the Latins, and a Roman here and there. But for the most part, the battle has been so fierce and zones of control, etc., in such positions, or cav pursuit or whatever, that most of what's gotten knocked out got killed. Did definitely have some units that were rallied, though, in both cases. It's just they're close to the battle line, so it's hard to see. You know, there's no line of routed units as there usually is in a battle. This is certainly an interesting battle. I haven't seen one play out quite like this. I think it's because of the depth of the two Roman-style formations. Most of the formations that we've seen facing the Romans just don't have that kind of staying power behind them. And even if they can handle the Romans, like Pyrrhus's forces could pretty much, they just, you know, they had this kind of single line that faced the Romans for the most part. But here we've got this intermingling line after line just crashing together into this mess of chaos in the center of the board. Anyway, I'm going to load this one up, moving slowly between my back and work fatigue, having a hard time getting through it.